Hi, and welcome to All Things Cozy with Matt.
And Gillian.
We are a bi weekly podcast about everything that is warm, soft, and comforting. We've awoken from our summer slumber and are ready to jump into fall's cinnamon scented hug. But this go around, we're firing up the time machine to the 90s, which many agree, mostly millennials and Gen Xers, encapsulates the season like no other. But before we slip into some earthy tones and stir up the leaves of nostalgia, let's pour ourselves a cup of tea and chat about our cozy summers in a new segment called Tea Time.
And I'm super excited about this, especially since a few of you suggested we review teas in our listener survey. And thank you to everyone who filled that out, by the way.
Yes, thank you. That was very helpful. And we took a lot of your feedback, including, as Julian mentioned, a call for us to sip more tea and review it and talk about it. So, normally during this time, we do cozy in the news. And we're not totally giving up on that. We're just going to also try more of a check in. Jillian and I are sipping tea. We just have a casual chat to open up the episode. And we would like you to let us know what you think of this change. And if you want to see this more often, or we can alternate it with Cozy in the News, let us know how you would like us to open our episodes more. We're so crowdsourced, we're so open to feedback.
Yeah. And I mean, I gives an opportunity to chat and catch up with you because we have a lot to catch up on.
We are just coming back from our summer hiatus. We've been gone for the months of June and July. We're back in August. We missed you all. Glad to be back in the
Yeah.
saddle. Missed you,
I
Jillian.
missed you too. And you've been out of the state. And I've been
Yes,
hunkered down here in LA.
I spent most of my summer in Missouri, in St. Louis, Missouri. I guess we should start talking about our teas and then we can go into how our summers went.
Yeah, I'll just say what I'm sipping as we go into our cozy conversations about the summer. Hot cinnamon sunset, and it's in this beautiful burnt orange tin. At first, I was like, wow, what a name, Hot Cinnamon Sunset. But then as the day progressed and into this morning, it reminds me the name of if you're sick in a tropical location or a hot location, like Hot Cinnamon Sunset. I don't know, it's not as appetizing as it was.
Oh, I still think that sounds appetizing. You think it sounds like a disease? Like I came down with a case of hot cinnamon
I
sunset?
don't know, a hot sunset, it just reminds me.
Well, the cinnamon's hot.
Yeah, well, think of having a fever in a sunset, like a tropical locale, and doesn't sound very appetizing. Maybe I'm just putting forth my own trauma. I'm reading a lot into this, but it also sounds like the title of a song of some indie band, Hot Cinnamon Sunset. Anyway, this taste is black tea with warming spices. It's very sweet. Will give you that fall kick that you want. I'm gonna sip it right now. Because it's a nice, diverse spice array. But yeah, a little too sweet for my taste, but it's nice to sip and get those fall vibes. What are you sipping?
I'm sipping a classic English breakfast black tea. Nothing
Mm.
special. It's by a brand called Rituals, and I snagged it at the Warner Brothers studio tour that I went to with my mom yesterday.
Hey,
So,
love a freebie and straight black tea. It's like you're, as the kids would say, you're raw dogging the tea.
oh, I don't know that's an appropriate term for our cozy podcast, but
Sorry, that's as R rated.
this isn't tea time after dark.
That's as R rated as I'll get. You know I don't like naughty talk.
Honestly, I just grabbed a free packet of tea. I was like, "Oh, let's try this and talk about it." I love an English breakfast. It's solid. It's exactly what you think
Mm-mm.
it tastes like.
I think that's what you need in a tea, not something too sweet and syrupy. I don't like teas like that, so I don't know why I got the hot cinnamon sunset.
Well, you gotta try new things.
Yeah, I gotta try new things.
Well, more importantly, Julian, how was your summer?
I had the best summer. I was thinking all summer long, those folks who are saying, "You gotta do more cozy summer stuff. You gotta get into summer. This is a great cozy season." Maybe you're right, because I just sat on my tickets all summer long, and I didn't do anything. I stayed at home. I didn't travel because my last summer was very travel heavy with all my nephews and everything they had going on. I watched Reba 'cause it's on Netflix. That show, I don't think it got enough flowers. Yes, it's having a revival, but it's generally funny. I love the cast, a great mix of folks in there. And while I was watching Reba, I was crafting. And by crafting, I have a Lego set that I finally
Ooh.
got around to. It's a frog Lego set. It's a cherry blossom frogs. And I got it in maybe 2021. It's been sitting in my house. And I just said, every single day, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get to that. I'll get to that. But this summer, I had the time and I whipped out my Lego frogs, but I do have a bone to pick with Lego. But maybe that's another story for another time.
No, no, let's pick our bones. This is what tea time is all about. We just gotta be real. You
Well,
gotta spill the tea, Julian.
so the cherry blossoms really drew me to it. They have white leaves and the frogs are pink and the flowers are pink. And I was like, "Oh my god, that's so beautiful. It's a bonsai tree." And I was really proud of myself, so I didn't think I was gonna be able to do it. But I got to the part where you put on the leaves, and in the instruction book, they show the green leaves, so I'm going step by step. Why give me green leaves? I thought that it was going to accent the white leaves to make it look like a true cherry blossom, but no, they gave you an option to have green or white leaves. So I made all these green leaves, and I'm not gonna go back and undo them. I've already made so much work in progress, so now I just have the green leaves with the pink frogs on them. This doesn't look as good as it would've if I had the white leaves. Why didn't they just tell me to do the white leaves first or put that first in the instruction manual?
This is an opportunity, though, to change up the design. You can
Here's
you
the
can change
thing.
it by seasons. You can take it apart. It's not glued together, Julian. If it's like a calm crafting experience, you can just do it all over again.
No, it felt like I was climbing a mountain. It was nice to do, and it was enjoyable, and I felt really like I achieved something because putting together things is not my forte, and I was like, "Wow, I'm watching Reba, I'm doing this, I'm really making it happen." And you're right, you can't take it together back together, and I think that's why you're a Lego guy because people love doing that, taking things together, putting
I'm
it
a
apart.
Lego guy?
That's how your mind works. You're like, "Yeah, you can take it apart and put it back together, and that's what makes Lego." For me, no, I'm just assembling it one time. I'm not going
There will
back and
be no
forth.
repeat performances.
No. So anyway, that was my whole thing with and then I don't wanna take up the whole conversation, but I also saw Twisters in theaters. I had mozzarella sticks. I had some little spicy tuna crispy rice, which is questionable at a movie theater. I got popcorn. I had all the things, and I had the best time. It was brainless. After the movies, I saw this gaggle of girls in the bathroom, and they were confronting their friend, cornering her and saying, "You oversold Glenn Powell in his white shirt with the rain coming down. I thought we're gonna see more of his body and his abs."
Oh, wow, that's a pretty critical review. Did you agree with that assessment?
I was
Did
peop
Twisters leave you lacking?
People said people cheer when he comes out in the white shirt, so I was ready for it. I was like, "It's okay." I would clap on a plane to make the other person feel less alone in the clapping if they're the only one, and I would embarrass myself. So I would woo with everyone else if they were gonna do the woo. I was ready. I was, like, almost vibrating, I was like, "Yeah, we're all gonna woo," but no one did. I thought he was very handsome in the movie.
You say that like somebody's grandma. It's a very handsome boy.
He had great energy. I loved it. I had the best time. It's just like, going to a summer movie, and yeah, I don't have to just doing anything, and I've just been drinking some new seltzers from a company called Dram. They have some really wonderful flavors, so I've been trying out some new seltzers and really just doing nothing. Maybe your summer had a little bit more of events.
That sounds pretty eventful. You climb Mount Everest of Lego, you saw Twisters. Honestly, it goes by really quickly. I had a wonderful summer and it sold me on the coziness of summer in a way that I
Mhm.
used to dread it. I like the time off I get in the summer,
Yeah,
but I always struggled with the weather. But the weather was, for the most part, really beautiful. We enjoyed a lot of lake and pool days with family.
cozy by the water.
My in-laws live on a lake, and so we went over to their house a couple of times over the summer just to have a full lake experience. People were fishing, swimming. I went out in a paddle boat. We literally rowed a boat gently down the lake, and we dog sat for my sister-in-law. We had her pool to ourselves, and so to have a private pool for 3 days was incredible.
I can't even imagine living that kind of life.
Literally let the fat fly. It was,
Yeah.
fantastic.
So much water for you.
I'm not a water guy typically, so that was a really nice experience. I also had a very beverage focused summer. My beverage of choice was beer. I have some weight to lose after a summer of brewery tasting room visits. We hit up a ton in Chicago and St. Louis. My favorites were Off Color in Chicago and Side Project in St. Louis for those beer aficionados if you're traveling through those areas. Special shout out to Off Color's April Rain brew, which was a white tea, and I'm not sure if I'm saying this, it's like a Japanese citrus fruit, sudachi infused, but it was a really light, wonderful flavor.
Sounds amazing, so
Yeah, it was great.
refreshing. Nothing more refreshing than a brewski.
I like sour beers, so those are right up my alley. And it was a summer of music. I went to 2 concerts. I went to the Rolling Stones in Chicago, and we saw Alanis Morissette and Joan Jett in St. Louis. Really wonderful performances. But yeah, it was a jam-packed summer. and I already miss it. I miss having the time off, but I'm also equally excited for fall and to dive into what it meant to experience fall, not just now, but in the 1990s.
Yeah, it was weird after our summer highs to try and get into the headspace of fall, but I think this topic is such a fun one, and going back to listener survey, a lot of folks wants to go back in time and cover certain decades, so here we are. Should we fall into the 90s?
Let's do it. Let's get into our time machine. Let's H.G. Wells into this episode's topic.
All right. Teal and hot pink pumpkins, apple cider Oreos, and perhaps most offensively, pumpkin spice sparkling water. Yes, that's a real thing. We're a no judgments podcast, but some might argue our fall loving hearts have lost the plot. Maybe that's why the 90s have crept back into the pumpkin patch of our minds. We miss the earthy tones, the simple decorations, and deliciously moody atmosphere that makes fall fall. And don't get us started on the fashion. Every day there's a new article on how to nail grunge, rich jewel tones, and plaid galore of this magical decade. So let's fire up the time machine Matt, back to the 90s. We'll revisit our favorite fall movies, music, fashion, and trends.
I'm hearing In Sync right now. Everything's totally tubular.
Hey, there's a lot to love, all the corny sayings of the time, but it's also super cozy. And before we even get into the movies and the music and all of that, what makes the 90s so cozy and quintessential for you personally? What memories is stirring up in the leaves?
I think first and foremost, it's cozy because I was a child during that decade. And I know
Mhm.
that's a really key component of coziness and nostalgia is just being a certain age. I think that has probably, if we're being honest, the most to do with it. I read a comment on something online that said it was like a photo of fall in the 90s or 80s or whatever, and somebody said the air just smelled different then.
No, okay, hey, I was actually thinking about this as you were talking. When you mentioned that, global warming wasn't as bad. So I think
Fair,
we
yeah,
got more fall.
temperatures were a little bit different,
So
yes.
maybe they aren't too off because that's what made it partially a reason it's cozy for me. Is 'cause I remember just skipping through the leaves, jumping in leaf piles. Fall came earlier. I always thought September was a fall month, but it's not fall until the end of summer. But because in New York, September actually looked like fall.
And I grew up in the Midwest, so we both had very quintessential American autumns where you have all the changing leaves and it's very orange and red and yellow. As listeners know, we're in California now, but back then we really did experience a true fall in those parts of the country. But yeah, I really just think of being a kid and walking home from school in that crisp autumn air. And what I really loved, obviously, Halloween is a huge part of autumn for me. I'm trying not to lean too much into the holiday because it's only August, but I really loved participating in elementary school Halloween parades. I would take the costuming very seriously and would pridefully march with all of my classmates. That was so fun too because we'd walk around the neighborhood. You'd really get a full breath of fresh, crisp air and see all the colors and just a really wonderful time.
Yeah, I don't know how often they do Halloween parades anymore. I'd be curious because I we did that in my school as well, and that was, as you mentioned, such a source of pride. There's nothing more exciting than showing off your wares. Most often, at least when I was very young, homemade costumes,
Yeah.
and that was really special. So yeah, of course I share those memories, especially since like you said, we grew up in quintessential fall environments. But for me also, the colors that were on trend during that time really represent fall to me. And I was doing research on it and I found this website, Onyx Creative, and it talked about the color trends throughout the decades. There was a lot of color trends that are bright blues, and especially going into the 2000s, we really toned it down a lot and got into some more neutrals. And then obviously there's beige, and beige was a part of the 90s, so I can't count that out. But most of all, the website stated that dark plum, forest green, dark brown, black, and deep red were really popular during that time. And I really associate those deep jewel tones with fall. And that's when I try and, if I had to visualize fall as a person, that's what it would look like. And so I miss that color scheme. I think the color scheme back then was so cozy and we really leaned into those specific colors, which I miss.
Yeah, it was a good time to be goth, and you really had, like you said, deep tones that also felt natural,
Mhm.
and I really miss, like, a dark lip
Yes,
on pe
come back.
yeah, and I agree, and also every decade it feels like, especially as we get into an era that's more and more technologically advanced and it's so fast-paced, the slower speed of living in that time and, having to call ahead to make plans and all those little details of just living in the '90s at the dawn of the internet age, I really feel like that also adds to the feeling of magic of just being really present in that experience as a kid too, where you were and you're doing what you were doing at that time, and you were not getting pinged on your phone. We were not, like, thinking about what was going on across the world. We were just really present in that moment. I feel like I bang on that drum a lot, but I think that is also part of the nostalgia of that era for people our age.
Yeah, we could actually take in and enjoy the fall.
Yeah.
Not only are so many cozy elements in terms of the season and really getting to skip and enjoy the leaves and all the hues, the music was also great. And there's a lot of wonderful 90s songs that encapsulates fall really well. So Matt, what are you listening to rewinding back the clock?
I'm not winding back the clock very much because I listen to these artists all the time
Same.
anyway, so it's not really that different. My favorite band of all time is the Smashing Pumpkins. Can you get a more
Mhm.
autumnal, A, name for a band, but
Right.
also the kind of whimsy goth of that whole sound and Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, which that album came out in October of 1995, is an incredibly autumnal double LP. You can see why they even released it in October when they originally did. It just has that feeling. And I remember being a kid and being babysat by my cousin, and she was a teenager, and I was just a little kid. And I remember those first music videos that I have a memory of. And one of the first ones I have is the Bullet with Butterfly Wings music video. And I just thought, I can't believe she's watching this. This is just satanic.
Oh, Matt, I didn't know that you had that vibe as a kid.
It just felt like it was very dark and, ooh,
Out
I don't
there.
know. I'm worried about my cousin. Is she hanging out with like
That speaks to your sweet, concerned nature.
Anyway, but that's an album that I love, and I especially love the song 33, which is really nostalgic. Even just the gentle acoustic guitar on that album, I think is the perfect song to listen to while you're walking through the fall foliage on an afternoon in late September. That would be my first pick is 33 by the Smashing Pumpkins, and I still listen to that a lot today. That single came out in November 1996, which just goes to show too,
Perfect.
that long reign of the Smashing Pumpkins singles, they dominated '95 into '96, along with a lot of, like, huge grunge acts. Pumpkins get this is not a music podcast, I need to stop talking about this,
Mm.
but they get lumped in with grunge a lot. I don't know that they quite fit. I think they're a little bit broader in terms of their sound, but that was part of that era, so you can't get more '90s than that. How about you, Julian? What would be your first pick for a song if you're going back in time and listening to an autumnal hit from the '90s? Maybe not a hit, but like a any kinda song.
I first wanna say shout out and salute to all the babysitters out there
Yeah.
who have passed on their knowledge, of coolness. So my first pick, it's Yola Tango's "Autumn Sweater," and it came out in April 1997 from the album I Can Hear the Heart Beating as One. So it's not a fall release, but it's the perfect fall song for me, and similar to you, I listened to this over and over again, but maybe more so sparingly. It will never wear out, but you really have to be in a certain mood for it too. It has that quintessential fall vibe in the title, Autumn Sweater. So, I mean, it hits two important parts, autumn and sweater. But for me, it's not just the title, it's the song really does sound like a sweater. It's fuzzy, it's warm, it's dreamy, and the sound is deep and it really takes you in. It's like the low hums and all just the mix of the sounds, it makes you wanna hibernate in it, and it's just so cozy, and it's a love song, and I think that also too speaks to fall for me because I always see fall as new beginnings and fresh starts, and so sparking a new romance, I think, is very cozy, and whenever I would if I had to picture that scene in my mind, it'd be taking place in the fall. So that is my pick, and I think it would probably end up in a lot of other lists for other folks. But if you haven't heard it, definitely put it on, have some tea or a nice deep red glass of wine and listen.
It also just has that wonderful 90s alternative sound to it
Mhm.
that puts you right back into that decade.
Yep.
By the way, so normally when we used to talk about songs in this podcast, we'd play a little clip. We want to make sure we get to all of our topics today. We're not going to play some of the music, but the links are in our show notes. So if you click on the episode wherever you're listening to it, you can go click on links to find these songs and listen to them after we've yacked about them.
And well, speaking of yakking and yapping, what is next on your playlist?
All right. So the other song that I feel like feels very 90s fall, even though it's really, I think it came out in the summer and it's not really down just to fall, but I feel like she has maybe one of the most iconic 90s voices. And let's be honest, I did just see her in concert. So this is probably why she's top of mind. But Alanis Morissette, pretty much anything from Jagged Little Pill, but I'm gonna say this single, which was released in October 1995. 1995 is a big year for music that Matt still listens to, and that would be "One Hand in My Pocket." Also
Mhm.
a very reflective song. I think Autumn tends to be that. It's just a really easy song to listen to. Anyone would jingle down the sidewalk in autumn listening to "One Hand in My Pocket."
I think that's a great pick. I can so imagine someone getting ready for school, pulling out their plaid skirt, and that song's blasting in the background. I don't know. I feel it. I get what you're saying. And you're right. It's definitely that perfect 90s voice. And yeah, I really like that pick. I think thinking outside of the box like that too, because I wanted a special mention to Sixpence None the Richer because I was curious also to what other people thought, because if are my picks really off, or I was just curious how other folks felt about what 90s songs would represent fall, and a lot of people said Sixpence and the Richer, and I could see some of their songs really hitting that spark. But anyway, my second pick is from the Magnetic Fields, The Dreaming Moon, from the album Get Lost, and is released in September 1995. So I guess 1995, like you said, really big year. I know September is not technically fall in the first half, but like I said, I think of September as fall, and I'm gonna keep it that way, and there's no arguments. I will not engage. But I love this song because it feels like a ride along with magic, and you can just picture yourself driving down a fall road, the rich reds and yellows blurring past. It's dreamy and cozy, but it also has some twinkly bells within the song. And if you know the magnetic fields, that's a really wonderful contrast to the lead singer's voice. And you just it's playful, but it's also I can imagine on a dark full night, you're just lying in your bed and daydreaming along with the moon or dreaming along to the moon, and there's something that just sparkles about it. I know fall for many folks is when they slow down and really take a time to reflect, but it feels like for me, for I'm just getting started, and that's when I feel the most magical, and this song really speaks to that for me.
That's a great choice. I love the magnetic fields, and I agree. The chimes and the bells in the song, they're really magical sounding, and they evoke the celestial nature of the title.
Yeah, and they were played in LA, but I was there seeing Glenn Powell's abs, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know what to do. What should I do?" But
And you
yes,
chose Glenn Powell's abs.
because I had okay, so I don't know if everyone's familiar with iPick, but they're expensive tickets, and you have to reserve the seats, and I was going with some friends, so I didn't wanna bail out. But yeah, it was a hard one.
You picked Glenn Powell over the magnetic
Yeah.
fields. I saw them live in Chicago many dreaming moons ago.
Mm, that's super cozy, I did not know that.
It was a great concert. It was actually there's a smaller stage below if people are familiar with Millennium Park, there's, like, a big music shell area, like, outdoor concert venue, but underneath that, there's a smaller one, and that's where we saw them. It was pretty
Mm.
intimate, but it also felt like even then, and this was, like, almost 15 years ago, it felt like I was going to some sort of, like, classic music revival where they were, like, preserved in amber or something. It was very, like everyone there was taking it very seriously.
That's like when I went to Neutral Milk Hotel. I think that had the same vibe.
Yeah.
We're not in church.
It was a very NPR feeling in that room.
Yeah. Well, now that we've played our favorite 90s fall songs, let's fire up the projector.
Yeah, let's do it.
What are you watching?
This is so funny, Jillian, because both of us had the idea that, okay, 90s fall movies, You've Got Mail. Let's revisit You've Got Mail. Let's talk about You've Got Mail. And then I think we both tried to be too different with it. So, listeners, we are not talking about You've Got Mail, even though that is the obvious 90s fall movie choice. We will circle back to that another
Yeah.
time.
It'll
Um,
have its day, just not
we
today.
our have to be different hipsters tendencies jumped out a little too strong on today's episode. I picked October Sky, and I gotta be honest, is this the most autumnal feeling movie? Absolutely not. The most autumn thing about it is that it does take place during October, and it has October in the title. The other thing I would say is fall about it is that it does take place during the beginning of the school year, because it really does take place like during those months, because it's a biographical film about Homer Hickam Jr., the son of a West Virginian coal miner, but he refuses to follow in his father's footsteps to be a coal miner. Instead, he wants to follow his passion for rocketry. And he later becomes a NASA engineer. It's based on his memoir called Rocket Boys. And the funny thing about this title, and they say this is totally coincidental, I don't know if I believe it, but Rocket Boys is a perfect anagram for October Sky, which is crazy to think about.
Sorry, can you say that again? I need to piece it together in my mind.
It's an anagram for October Sky. You can take all those letters and you
Oh.
can rearrange them into
Sorry, it sounded
October
like a
Sky or
ghost.
Rocket Boys.
Sorry, when I said, "Oh," I went, "Oh, oh," like a ghost. I'm sorry.
Jillian's being overwhelmed by the anagram. Anyway,
Wow.
that's a fun fact.
That is a fun fact.
So it takes place in the late 50s. It's inspired by the launch of Sputnik in 1957. So they see Sputnik sailing across the October sky and are like,
Mm.
"Hey, Americans got to get in space." So he starts with his pals like building rockets to try to advance the American space race. Not really advance it, but invest it in science being really cool and interesting. This is a perfect movie that you play in school, by the way. It's like AP tests are over. We're
Safe.
watching October Sky. It's a quintessential American dream coming of age film where it's, I don't want to be a coal miner dad. I want to be a NASA engineer. And he does it. The big conflict in the movie is, can I get to the science fair? I got to the science fair,
Where does
but
it
they
take
stole
place? So I'm sorry.
West Virginia,
Okay.
but they stole our part, and they got it. The whole town
Mm.
comes together and they remake it and they deliver it. It's peak science fair drama. Laura Dern plays the teacher, and she's like this like amazing woman who inspires him. So there's all these tropes going around. So it's just a really cozy, warm blanket of Americana. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal in his first leading role. He plays Homer. Jake Gyllenhaal was only 17 when they filmed this movie, and Chris Cooper plays his dad. So it's a really sweet movie. It takes its characters seriously in a really nice way. It doesn't vilify anyone. Chris Cooper's dad is not like, oh, that dastardly dad, we got to get him. You understand where he's coming
Mhm.
from, and the characters are really richly rendered. They're not flat. So I highly recommend watching it. October Sky. It's a good fall film, even if it's not going to give you the strongest fall vibes.
I'll have to check that out sometime this week because it does sound really interesting. I can't believe I haven't seen it. But I think to your point of the American dream all coming together, making something happen and be excited, and there's an educational value. That is very fall, very September, even though it's October sky. So I can see where that fits. Feel good story. You would categorize it like that, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely, yes. It's definitely in its own kind of like fantasia of you can be anything, you can do
Mm,
anything kind of energy around.
mm.
So
Taking it from feel good to feel bad. My choice is Stepmom, released in 1998. Actually, it was released on Christmas Day, and you really have to wonder. If you're not familiar with the plot, Susan Sarandon is a mom of two kids. She's recently divorced. Her husband's a hotshot lawyer, lives in the city, has a young new thing. That's Julia Roberts. Of course, they're at odds. Young stepmom, I'm sorry, and a mom who is trying to make it work in this new dynamic, and it's messy and it's complicated, and there's lots of yelling and tense arguments. But what we learn is that Susan's character is battling cancer, and just hitting me now. It takes place in the fall because it's the coming to the close of her life, and
mm,
she dies in actually on Christmas Day or around that time. So it takes place in the fall as a result.
perfectly timed to be maximally devastating.
Yeah,
Obviously, that loss is never going to be easy, but let's take the holiday right with it too.
right. Roger Ebert called it sentimental terrorism. And what was really funny is I didn't know this, Patch Adams was released at the same time, and he made a joke, he's like, "Well, same thing with Patch Adams, but at least stepmom doesn't have a is holding a gun to her head," if you know the reference. Anyway, so The outfits in that movie, the fall fashion on peak. Julia wears this red knitted cap, and you can see it in the cover of the movie, and it actually went up for auction. I think it should have been put in the Smithsonian. It's such a beautiful ode to '90s fall fashion, and then Susan has this brown wool coat. There's actually a Pinterest board about the fashion in this movie. It's so fall and so on point. And something about the way it was filmed, like lots of golden hues. Julia's hair in this movie is this mix of blonde and brown. It's really rich, and then Susan's red hair. And even though the husband lives in the city, they live outside of it. And so their yard and home is so beautiful. The fall setting is really lovely. So I think for me, what makes this movie fall is just obviously the setting, the fashion, even if the subject matter is not very cozy, even though there's a lot of sweet moments. And I guess maybe I was watching it with fall color glasses because the reviews of this movie are really bad. But for me, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, let me fire up some old clips and watch it." Like I said, it's not the most feel-good movie, but if you're looking for fall vibes, just go see Stepmom. Maybe not on Christmas.
I think this is an excellent choice. I was obsessed with this movie as a kid. My family should have known I was gay the second I was grabbing the Stepmom VHS at 11
Right?
years old. It absolutely is sentimental terrorism. It's peak melodrama,
Mhm.
but like you said, it is strongly giving fall energy, the costumes, the
Yes.
sets. There's little flavors of fall everywhere in the film. And also, despite it being devastating and just very manipulative and overwrought, perhaps is one word one could use, I still find it to be very touching and moving. And I really love the scene where they're singing Ain't No Mountain High Enough, as corny as it is. And I have a lot of memories of watching that film. It was one of those films that for a long time, anytime it would come on, I would just watch it, just be pulled into
Can't resist.
the creams and the beiges and the oranges of the film.
Mhm.
You're right, it has a really strong fall color palette, and it also serving strong 90s. 98 was, like, I think a good year right before we got a little too into the millennium, early 2000s energy. October Sky is a period film, so we're getting, like, 50s costumes. Stepmom, I think you're still getting, like, 90s fashion
Yes.
before we get into some of those early trends of the 2000s.
Yeah, and I think Julia and Susan are a great duo, and even if it got bad reviews, I think that their dynamic was well done, and Julia, of course, is the queen of that time, with a feather in her knitted red beanie. Now that we have watched our '90s fall films, let's head to the mall and look back on our favorite fashions. What are you wearing?
I'm no fashionista, I gotta admit that, and honestly, in the '90s, my mom was buying all my clothes, but I will say that looking back on the decade and what absolutely influenced me or what I love to see and love to see again and even wear myself, love flannel,
Mhm.
plaid shirts, oversized sweaters, leaning into that grunge aesthetic, very comfortable, very lived in, warm. You can pull your collar up and face the cold, to pull a lyric from 33 by the Smashing Pumpkins. And while I hated wearing them at the time, turtlenecks, I wanna go back and revisit turtlenecks because the older I get, the more I want that neck covered, so very cozy, warm fashion. Those are the things that stick out to me for fashion. How about you? Were you at Delia's all the time? What '90s trends were you following?
Well, Delia's was when I could do some small jobs and I could buy it for myself. I think that was a little bit far. Yeah, I was definitely a Delia's gal in the 2000s, but in the 90s, my mom was dressing me as well, and there were a lot of turtlenecks, also a lot of overalls. That
Mhm.
speaks to me is that time period, jumping in the leaves, perfect for that if you're wearing some overalls. Had a ton of overalls, lots of velvet, and velvet's actually coming back in fashion. I'm sure people are like, "Jillian, don't say jewel tones again, don't say it again," but
Say it again, I love jewel tones. I love the
jewel
word, I love looking at them.
lots of deep fall jewel tones. I think even for one Christmas, my mom put us in all velvet jewel tones because my 3 sisters, so we all had to be matching for every Christmas photo. Also, I had some beautiful velvet long sleeve shirts and floral patterns, but more fall, like autumnal kind of flower vibes going on there. Lots of plaid skirts. I fondly remember wearing plaid skirts when I was younger. Also, these waffle shirts is once again fall flowers and harvest prints. I don't know if this would make sense, but I felt like I was like a walking farmer's almanac. Had these like some harvest print on me, and I think that was
Yeah.
very, very popular during that time for whatever reason. Coming back in style for sure. It's interesting with plaid and flannel because I think they had a huge resurgence maybe like 2010
Yeah, for
time, and
sure.
but I think we're trying to reinvent it in some ways because even during that rise, we didn't see a lot of, at least I didn't, plaid skirts. I think that's very 90s. I'm not really seeing that around. Maybe that's coming back. And every time you look, Vogue's doing some look back on the fall fashion in the 90s, and it's still very hot and on trend. So keep your eyes peeled, and maybe you can put on some turtlenecks, some fall flower waffle shirts to your heart's content. Yeah, I like that fashion. It's very cozy.
I'm really glad that you called out velvet because that's a fabric that definitely screams that era and you don't see it often anymore, but it is such a rich texture to it and
Mhm.
depth of color
Yes.
that's really wonderful. And I would love to get back into velvet, even though, yes, it can be very stifling and it's a very fragile fabric, but it definitely evokes the era very well.
When you say depth of color, I just miss color. I don't think it's around anymore. It's like this Kardashian era. Now I'm really sounding old. Lots of neutrals and really, there's no depth to the color. They're all really light, kind of flimsy colors.
Or it's very bright.
Yes, or bright.
And not like the day glow kind of neon colors of our youth, but just primary colors I'm seeing a lot of.
Mhm.
There are some bright colors out there for sure. Lots of pinks and blues and the like, but I think you're right. The jewel tone, darker colors, they're not as present. Not that we are setting any trends here at All Things
No.
Cozy. No one's trying to dress like us, believe me.
I'm way behind. It's hard because in LA, I don't know how to dress. I haven't known how to dress for like the past 10
Well,
years.
there's a certain point, and I feel like I'm getting to be that age when there's the clothes that look good for a certain age, a certain body, and not to put any rules on anyone. We can all wear what we want to wear, of course. But personally, I've started taking more and more color out of my wardrobe just because I feel like I would have some shirts and it's like I look like I'm like dressing up like Steve Buscemi and like, How do you do, fellow kids?" It's like, okay, man, like it's time to put the graphic tees to rest. Let's just wear a polo shirt. And so I think there's, like, a bit of that piece where it's yeah, I could dress like a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha, but I would probably look ridiculous. The one thing I really do like, though, I do like the boxy cut of some button-down shirts that men are wearing now.
Mm.
Not when they're cut too high up, but I do like that. We're kind of getting over the fantasy that, like, I'm tucking in my shirt and I need to have these shirt tails hanging out. Let's just make that a nice clean line. I do like that. I will say for men's fashion, I'm enjoying that.
I'm with you. Not only do I feel like I dress a lot better in like East Coast climates because it makes a lot more sense to me,
Mhm.
especially with layering and jackets and all those things. I don't even know where to start. I don't know. Like, I went into a jeans store maybe like a year or so ago. I was given up and I said, "Can you help me? I don't know what they're supposed to look like." I genuinely don't know. I don't understand. Like, I'm sounding so old, but I'm just like, I'm just very confused.
Someone please help Jillian understand what jeans are supposed to
I
look
don't.
like. She's wearing ankle socks. Like, I'm so over that. Who's gatekeeping socks? No one
Well,
cares. The
I'm
internet's telling us we care, no one cares.
I'm on accidentally on trend maybe because I one of my summer highlights was buying new sneakers, and
Yeah.
if I don't wear ankle socks, then I scratch the back of my foot
There you
heel.
go.
So,
Back to the tube.
back to the tube. Hey, I guess that's one area where I'm winning, but let's not embarrass ourselves further and
Exactly, right? They're
let's
like
let's move on to our favorite. Now, this is a kind of a pick and choose your own adventure. 90s fall aesthetic trends, mementos, just generally, what are you taking with you? If you're firing your time machine back again, you can only take a few things with you. What's in the time machine, Matt?
from this era, and I think I'm getting this a little confused with maybe some early 2000s. I do think of like just general fall aesthetic. I remember a lot of scarecrows that are in that, what is that, rustic, handmade look, the squiggly line mouths, and like
Mhm.
there's that kind of thing. What I really love about 90s fall aesthetic for decoration is being a school age kid during that time. And in general, the paper decorations, like there was more paper decor that was, yes, wasteful and disposable, but we always took care of it. We take the tape off the back and use it again year after year. You'd have the stuff you just put on your wall. It could just be something as simple as a leaf or a squirrel with an acorn on it. Or if you're going into Halloween, it might be like a black cat or a moon or something. And those table centerpieces that would like fan out in paper, obviously, those are much older than the 90s, but I feel like just as a kid, that was the last era that I would see that more often. Paper decorations.
I hear you.
To call out to admittedly Halloween decor trends during that time that I miss very dearly, first were the Halloween leaf bags. You'd rake up all your leaves and then you put them in a trash bag that looked like a jack-o'-lantern. You tie up the top, and now not only are your leaves hidden from sight, but you have some Halloween decorations in your front lawn. Voila. I love the like trash bags as decor movement that we've lost. Admittedly wasteful though, like to waste of plastic at the end of the day for things that could biodegrade. So I get it. I get why it's fallen out of fashion, but I still miss it.
Yeah, me too.
And then this is actually technically late 80s, so I'm cheating a little bit. But if you're me, you follow a lot of Halloween decoration Instagram accounts, and you get people who go into Marshalls and Target and Walmart or wherever you can buy Halloween decorations. And they're snapping pictures so you can kind of see what the collections are looking like. And that's already happening. Sorry to summer
It's
folks, it's already
wild.
happening. You're going to see Halloween decorations if you haven't already in your stores. I know we're all used to the carved look of a pumpkin where like they have the triangle eyes and a toothy grin, but I'm seeing more and more human faces, like sculpted faces with like expressions like smiling, frowning, laughing on pumpkins again. And it reminded me of what we used to have in our house. These really detailed looking human faces on pumpkins. They're creepy as heck. They're called O Lantern if you want to take a look at what these look like. And they were foam pumpkins. They came out in the late 80s. They were made by a special effects designer, Todd Masters. And these are like carved pumpkins, but they're like, they look like human faces. They're made of foam.
Oh,
And he worked
foam.
on A Nightmare on Elm Street or more recently, The Twilight Saga, New Moon. But they're like making funny faces. And again, they're disturbing. As a kid, it freaked me out because it was
Yeah.
like a little bit too real. But I'm seeing this back again. And to me, it feels like this is not a decoration you see anymore as much, and this kind of like ugly Halloween decorations, very late 80s, early 90s look. The O Lantern pumpkin decor line. Those
Well,
links are in the show notes if you want to take a look yourself.
what I like about it, Matt, is that it spooks and it's very seasonal and fun without doing a lot. Like, I'm sure it obviously took a lot to craft those and design them and whatnot, but there's no smoke flying out of its face. There's
Yeah,
no lights. It's just, it is what it is. And that's going back to what you were saying with the simplicity of decorations. Decorations now have become so complicated, and in some ways it's really wonderful and we can get creative and there's so many great decorations these days, but I do miss the simple side of Halloween and fall decorations. Those are really
absolutely.
neat. I've never seen them. Maybe I blacked it out because they are a little creepy, but they're fun. I can see why they're coming back.
How about you, Jillian? What were some fall decor from the 90s that you are nostalgic about?
I went the route of fall themed or Halloween toys. I don't know what kids are playing with now for fall and Halloween, but I can't imagine it's necessarily this simple. There's 2 things. The first thing I got when I was younger, this little pumpkin doll in a matchbox. I brought it with me to the pumpkin patch. My mom said, "Leave it in the car," and I did not. And I was out in the patch playing with it, and I lost it, and I was devastated. I remember, like, looking back in the back of the car window and just like, "Where is it?" I felt so guilty and so bad, and it was so cute. Just put him to sleep in his little matchbox and his little pumpkin doll. And so I think maybe it was like a year or so ago, my mom found it. She doesn't remember if it was eBay or Etsy, and I tried to find the name of the company. And I wasn't gonna go out into my closet and unpack all the decorations because I packed it in there to keep it safe, not to lose it again. But it was really cute and brings back such a good memory for me, and it's really so sweet. And I know they're a line of Matchbox toys and different little dolls that you put in there, but it's really sweet and simple. And I'm glad I got back my pumpkin. I'm going to just pretend that it's the same one that I lost and it's found its way back to me.
It very well could be. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Maybe someone found it.
I'm glad you're reunited. That has a happy ending. Whenever you say Matchbox, I think of Matchbox cars,
Mm,
but you mean like a little tiny like doll that's inside of a matchbox that you slide out.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, you got it. I texted my mom. I said, "Can you try and figure out where's this from?" Or but she doesn't remember where she got it from. And so then the other item, and it came up on my feed, the Halloween tree. And I don't know if I'm tricking myself into believing that I had this. maybe I had a Christmas version, but it's this pumpkin almost like a Russian doll, except there's no layers. We just twist it open, and there's all these little ornaments or decorations that you can put on your Halloween tree, a little hand-painted ghost and a spider and all of these wonderful little Halloween mementos that you could decorate your tree with. And it looks so familiar to me. I must have had it because when it came across my feed, it really stopped me. So it must have triggered some memory, but it's so adorable. And once again, really simple, hand painted little ornaments and decorating a tiny tree and putting it back in your hand painted pumpkin that you can pop open for the next Halloween. It's just so special and sweet. I think that's what it speaks to me. What I remember, I think about the 90s in the fall and just those small, simple mementos that I don't know if kids have that today. Obviously, we don't have kids of our own, so we don't know. Maybe they're loving, maybe they have their own Halloween tree. I don't know. Maybe their own Matchbox pumpkins, possibly, but brings back some good memories thinking about it.
I love the Halloween tree toy. I love anything, especially at that time, that was like a Russian nesting doll.
Mhm.
And so to have this like big pumpkin that you open up into these smaller little ornaments is
Mhm.
so cute. I would have gone crazy if I had this. This is
Right?
incredible. It makes me wonder if Halloween trees, did that start in the 90s? Because obviously that's a decor item that has really picked up steam. And I'm seeing more like almost Christmas tree style Halloween trees. But I remember growing up, I think we got our first Halloween tree, which was looks like this, like, it's almost like a ornament holder. It's very gnarled branches. There's no foliage on it at all, and you just hang ornaments over it, but it has that Halloween look of being desolate and dark, and I remember getting one like that, similar, and playing with that in the 90s, not to this level of, like, intricacy where the ornaments go into a larger thing. Anyone who's more of an expert in that line, let me know, but I feel like the 90s is where that started, and then it really picked up steam over the subsequent decades.
Yeah, something about a tree for the holidays, any kind of holiday is really
Yeah.
special. I think our trip through the 90s has ended.
From our time here, just to set the scene, listeners, Jillian has a full Rachel haircut, and I have a bowl cut, but
Yeah.
we need to get back into that time machine.
For a second, I looked at myself like, "Do I?" That's how gullible I am. Yes, I will miss this time, but we can always take from what we reviewed and bring it into the present. We can maybe fire up eBay, find some
Yeah.
90s fashions.
You don't have to twist my arm to fire up eBay.
I love eBay.
And listeners, let us know what your favorite 90s fall memories were, things that you enjoyed from that era by sounding off in our social media at All Things Cozy Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and of course, our Facebook group at All Things Cozy Podcast.
I think it's a lot better transition than me just saying, "It's ended. Our trip's done. Get off the bus."
But it is. We have to get off the bus. We're going back forward in time. We're right here again, recording in 2024 in August. And we are back in the present moment, sharing some words of warmth. Jillian, what words are warming you this week?
Mine is from Angie Whalen Crosby, and the quote is, "Summer dashed off, her sundress flowing with greens, while autumn slipped into a gown with jeweled seams."
Mm.
Ooh. I
Jewel
lo
toned,
Jewel
Jules.
tones, I know, jewels coming up. I like it because I think I've stated this multiple times throughout the episode. It's just an evocative image that represents how I see autumn, maybe a golden, majestic woman in a deep plum gown adorned with lots of beautiful fall-colored gems, some dancing princesses vibes, and I can just imagine that. I love the idea of the summer lady in her flowing green dress just transitioning into the fall in the jewel beautiful gown. Just very
Gowns,
pretty.
beautiful gowns.
All the gowns, drowning in gowns.
I love when seasons are personified. So
Mhm.
this is a really beautiful quote.
What about you?
My words of warmth are from the journals of Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote, "When summer opens, I see how fast it matures and fear it will be short. But after the heats of July and August, I'm reconciled, like one who has had his swing, to the cool of autumn." And I wanted to pay a little respect to summer, really cozy summer. We're still in summer in August, but as we start to see our jeweled seams of autumn coming in, we do really look forward to those cool breezes as well. So, looking forward to embracing the autumn energy approaching us.
I love that for the same reason too. I think we both had a renaissance with summer, and we wanna pay its dues and
Yes.
tip our hat. We had a wonderful summer, but we're moving on, and we're also sniffing some fall scents, or at least fall adjacent, because I was struggling with this candle pick because I didn't wanna go into a very autumn, maybe Halloween spice scent, and that's a lot of what's out there right now, and I don't know if that really speaks to the '90s, and I also think autumn, especially in September, August, we don't really wanna dive into that quite yet, so I picked something that was fall adjacent. It's from Tatine, Forest Floor, and I got a petite size for $38, so it is on the pricier
That's a lot of money
side.
for petite.
Oh, yes. I stopped into a boutique in my neighborhood trying to shop local, 'cause I was like, "You know what? I just gotta go out into the wild and just me talk to some people, do some boots on the ground reporting." And so I went into this store called Lake in Silver Lake, and I spoke to the salesperson, and I said, "I need to find a candle that's fall adjacent and that is also cozy." And apparently she was the perfect person to ask because Jill she didn't have this candle here, and I need us to do some investigative journalism because when I said that, "Oh, we're doing a '90s fall episode," it's like, if you're doing that, you have to get a cassis red currant. I don't know if she was talking about a brand name of candle or if it's a scent profile. She was very excited and very animated about it, and then it was everywhere in the '90s in New York City, especially in fashion houses and all these things. She was a very elegant lady, so I'm sure she was, like, really on the scene, and she said it was one of the first luxury candles that ever came out, and so luxury candles are very popular today, but I don't think they were much so in the '90s, and for that reason, it was everywhere, and she's like, "You have to get it, you have to have it." And so I don't know what it is, but anyway, let's go back to Tatine's forest floor, and the description is green leaves and soil scented from rain, alive and ozonic. The candle says it's divine, distinctive earth perfume for the home. So it's an earth perfume. Let's just say it that way. I was afraid it's gonna mirror your candle that you got
Oh,
from.
the Forge Moon one?
Right, but what really drew me to this one, I said the forest floor, and so I was imagining a fall forest floor, and the
Mhm.
salesperson said this is a very popular scent, and it's very cozy, and she thought it would fit. So let me finally get to the smell because I've been yapping on. It's a light throw, but it's not that pine sol cedar kind of scent that I was afraid that it would be. I don't know if it reminds me of forest floor, but it definitely has an earthy scent, and I love that it said it's an earth perfume for the home. That's a lovely way to look at it. I don't know necessarily what earth would smell like, but this is let's say a sexy scent. But
Ooh, rolling around in the dirt on the forest floor.
yeah, while all your '90s songs are playing,
With your sixpence none the richer are playing.
yeah, my overalls. Is it worth $38? I don't know. Maybe I'll just have to go on the hunt for this woman, the '90s elegant lady who's probably, yeah, hot to trot in New York City at the time. Look for this cassis red currant and try and find that. If you were of age, an adult in the '90s, and you're sniffing around at that time, can you confirm this for us? I'm so curious now, and I've been Googling it for hours yesterday. Need to get to the end of this, but
Yeah, cassis currant is such a tongue twister.
she said it was the most absolutely beautiful fall scent, and it was everywhere in the '90s, but I don't know.
Well, forest floor, I love what it evokes, and it sounds like it does smell really earthy
Mhm,
and natural, which is
mhm.
great. I just wish for 38 bucks, I feel like we should be getting a grande, not a petite.
Yes. Yeah, the throw's not so great, but it's definitely a luxury candle for sure, and if you don't wanna dive too deep into the autumn seasonal scents that the spices and all that and whatever they do, cloves, then this would be a good one to try out.
Absolutely. That concludes our first episode of our new season. It's wonderful to be back in the cozy
Mhm.
saddle with y'all. Before we go, though, we do have some shout outs. First, we have a couple of reviews that we are very grateful for. One was by Linda Yoga Girl, who wrote, "Love the All Things Cozy pod. Matt and Gillian are fantastic hosts of this wonderful experience. Love it all, and especially excited to hear about Poirot, murder mysteries, Bravo, British Bake Off, and travel experiences. Thanks." Thank you, Linda Yoga Girl, for that wonderful review.
Yes, and Thank you, Woodland5067, for this lovely review. Love Matt and Gillian's show. It's super cozy and lighthearted. I love the various sections, including the Campbell reviews. It's slightly too consumer based at times, but that's balanced out with cute news sections and food discussion. And hey, you have a point, but we also love the wonderful things that you said and food discussion. That's one of my favorite parts of the show when we get to talk about food. We've had some really good food-oriented episodes. So maybe we'll do something actually, I know we will be doing something
Yeah,
like that
very soon,
very
very soon.
soon.
Not
Yes.
to spoil too much, but
Yes.
within the month. Yes, thank you all for your reviews. We love to hear your feedback. Wherever you listen to podcasts, leaving a review really helps the discoverability of people finding our show. If you do have a moment of your day to be like, I like listening to the show, just leaving a quick little written review wherever you listen helps other people find us, and we can continue to build our community. Speaking of community, check out our Patreon where you can support our show. We are expanding benefits into our new season. We're at patreon.com/allthingscozy, and you can see some of the new offerings. I will say I'm very excited about our new mugs. The design for spring is, I think, our cutest ever.
Yeah, I agree. It's so wonderful to collect them all if you have started with us from the beginning in our first fall mug.
Yeah.
My handles have broken. I've been very clumsy, but they're one of my most prized possessions in my cupboard, and Matt's not overselling. Very cute spring design.
And most importantly, our amazing book club
Mhm.
that we're kicking off again in August. We'll be reading the Traveling Cat Chronicles this month for our book club pick. And we come back together and we discuss it live with our listeners. So if you're interested in reading along with us and talking to us in person about a book that we've read, join our Patreon and join our book club.
Always a good time.
And we're going to keep the good times rolling. In our next episode, we'll be back in your ears in just 2 weeks. Until next time, stay cozy.